Hi friends, this is Kim from Creative DIY Purpose. Welcome. Today I have 7 easy wood projects for you. We're going to be using a variety of scrap wood and some simple decorative materials to create decor for your home or resale. Be sure to stick with me to the end to see how I repurpose one of those sides to the broken dresser drawer that I shared in a video a few weeks ago where we made that wall hanging from the drawer front. Let's make 2 decorative mini birdhouses for project number 1. Here are some materials and supply list if you'd like to take a screenshot. Taking a 2x4, I cut them into 2 separate houses. Both are 8 inches tall. Then using a miter saw, I cut at a 45-degree angle to make a roof peak. You can buy these pre-made from vendors like myself. Step 2, using a 1-inch boring drill bit, drill a partial hole near the center of the wood block for the birdhouse entrance. These drill bits come in a variety of sizes and they're great to have on hand for different DIY projects. Step 3, you'll want to sand the entire piece, ending with a fine grit sandpaper, probably like a 220 grit. Step 4, time to paint or stain your piece. I decided to apply a whitewash because I was in a hurry and I needed it to dry fast. So I applied some watered down white acrylic paint and wiped it back with a cloth. And for the second house, kind of the same thing, only I'm using the antique wax from Waverly instead of paint. I sprayed the wood block with some water and just a light covering of the antique wax and wiping it right back off. And now is the fun part. You get to customize, decorate, and add your embellishments. I did use apple barrel acrylic paint. Normally, I would spray that with a sealer before applying my transfer to make it easier for it to adhere. I did not do it this time and got very lucky. It's probably because it was just a very faint wash. I do want to thank my friend Lisa for these beautiful transfers that she got for me. And I have been so excited to use them and thought this was the perfect project. So they're from Redesign and it is the Garden Marvels series. I'm drilling a hole to be able to use a rusty nail for a perch. And then the other piece that I'm using is a turning knob off of an old lamp that was broken. What are some other ideas that you have for items that I could use to create a bird perch for future projects? I think you could even add some gilding wax and maybe some faux rust to give them more of a vintage look. The second that I saw this mini wreath on the transfers, I knew it had to go around one of the bird holes. All right, now for the messy part, we're going to take this moss. Normally, I would have used the brown Spanish moss, but I was all out and figured that the green would work and add a little pop of color. I twist the moss and then spun it around in a circle, added a lot of hot glue into that hole because I don't want the moss going all over the place. Usually I make a hot mess all over the place, but this time I kept it fairly neat. Adding one more transfer to the top. How sweet is this little blue bird? I thought he was perfect. And we're going to add him right up to the top to fill in that blank spot up there. I didn't add any type of roof to the top of the houses, but you definitely could. Back in the 90s, I actually made these in a variety of sizes and sold them at local craft fairs and created little roofs used from pieces of actual roof flashing. So I'll have to do that in a future video and show you guys how easy it is after I get some. I think that's just about it for this one. I'm going to take it outside, distress the edges with my cordless sander, and this one's all set. And you're about to witness a big oopsie on this next one. It's kind of funny, but I kept it in here because I think around Christmas time, this might actually be a good idea. But my initial thought was to take this lotus stencil and paint the design just on one side of the house. And as I'm putting it on there, you can see that I put it on centered, and let's take it off and you guys tell me what you think it looks like. I took that stencil off and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just made a gingerbread house. But cute for the holidays, but definitely not what I was going for. But I was running out of time. I think it was like 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to run with this. So again, we're going to take some of the moss, twist it, and get it in a circle. Put that in the center. Using lots of hot glue to keep it in there. I'm going to add one more rub-on transfer, which is this cute little speckled egg. And guys, it is that easy. And it doesn't have to be a 2x4. You could use about any size of wood to make these beautiful faux decorative birdhouses. Be sure to let me know how you like this project and the other 6 that I have for you today. And if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to hit the like button because that helps my channel grow and it keeps me pumped up and motivated to create new content for you. For project number 2, I'm going to make an art display board out of a piece of an old picket fence using only a few materials and tools. And I do have a few ideas on other boards that you can create that I'll share with you in a few minutes. But first, I'm going to dry brush on some white paint to really show off that texture of the wood. I didn't want to add any color to this piece because I'll be attaching some of my daughter's artwork on here, and I wanted her sweet little notes and little pieces of artwork to be the focal point. The ink stamps that I'm using are from IOD, and they are the typesetting stamps. Whoops, and my poor T fell off, but I decided just to run with the A and the R. And here's those other ideas if you'd like to take a screenshot. These are some ideas on other things that you can stamp to the top and use any size or shape of wood that you'd like. And because this wood has such a rough texture, it was hard for the ink to soak in there. So I fixed the R and I hand stamped the T on. I did have to alternate the letters in order for the uppercase letters to fit on here. I did push the T over a little too far to the right hand side, but that's okay. It's handmade and it's made with love. I'm drilling a small pilot hole to be able to attach this metal clip, and that probably wasn't even necessary. This was a little screw that I added a tiny washer to because the hole in that metal clip is on the larger side. And I needed a short screw to make sure that it didn't go through to the other side of the board. Now let's talk about this metal clip. It is a really nice heavy duty clip. It's a 2.8 inch by 2.8 inch clip that I purchased from Walmart. Now all this project needs is a sawtooth hanger on the back and it's ready to go up on the wall. For project number 3, we will take a slat off of a wood pallet and turn it into a wall hanging. Here's a list of materials and tools if you'd like to take a screenshot. Took one slat off of a pallet, cut it into 2 separate pieces, and cut a 45-degree angle up at the top. Sanded both of them, especially on the one side where they're going to be brought together with some Gorilla Glue, because it was very uneven and we want to get a nice tight fit. This piece of wood I found in my scrap pile and cut that down, and we're going to use that as a little mini shelf. Here's a quick tip. When gluing pieces of wood together, I try to put some scrap wood down so that way it's not laying flat on the surface because I don't want it to dry and have paper stuck to it. I applied some Gorilla Glue on with a paintbrush, applying it to both of the sides before putting them together. Once that was dry, I applied Gorilla Glue to that little shelf piece. And now that the mini shelf has had a chance to dry, let's drill in some pilot holes and add a couple nails. Okay, so I did use the speed up option on that part. Trust me, I do not move that fast in real life. Going back to the garden market transfers, we're going to add the word home up at the top. And then we'll make a little wreath to go up there as well from this greenery wire that I purchased from Walmart a couple of years ago. I'm going to attach it with a staple up at the top, and then I will hot glue that leaf to cover up the staple. We'll add a little jute string bow right there. First, we have to apply our transfer, and it worked out really well on the bumpier material. I was pleasantly surprised. Make sure that I burnish that really well since it is a bumpier surface. Then we're going to take some hot glue and tack that wreath down at the bottom. And make sure it doesn't cover up the word home, but that the leaves are all in the position where I want them. And then we've got to fix that one up at the top to cover up that staple. I decided to use the staple for it because sometimes, especially if you're storing items or moving them around a lot, sometimes hot glue can come undone, and we don't want that to happen. All right, so that's pretty much it for this piece. How would you have embellished this piece, and would you have painted it or left it plain? For project number 4, we're going to make a simple candle box. Here's what I used to create one that will hold 5 mason quart jars. In last week's video, we made one similar out of 2 repurposed shutters, and that one held 7 quart jars. This project is so easy that you can assemble one of these in less than 20 minutes. You will have your 2 end pieces, your 2 side pieces. Both the end pieces and the side pieces are made from a 1x5. Mine is a combination of older wood that I had and a new pine board. Now this bottom board is a 1x6. Now you could use a 1x5 for the base, but again, I'm using what I have on hand. And the reason this makes a difference is on how you're going to assemble it. If you're using a wider board on the bottom, you're going to put your side and end pieces on top of that board. If you were to use a 1x5 for the base, you would put your sides and your ends on the side and the end of the board. The reason this is so important is this is what's going to hold those 5 quart jars. If you go any smaller, your quart jars are not going to fit in there, but you could always use other jars or make a box like this for other decorative purposes. Now, because I am so new to making these, I double check, triple check, quadruple check to make sure before I drill any holes and add any nails that I'm going to get a nice tight fit, especially since I'm using different types of wood. Once I know that everything's going to line up, I'm drilling 2 pilot holes on either side of the end pieces. The reason I do this instead of just hammering in a nail, I don't want to split the wood, and I also don't want to bend the nail. And I greatly apologize. This was extremely awkward because where my overhead tripod was hanging. So not only did I not get a good angle for you guys, but man, it was quite the challenge to put together. I wouldn't recommend putting it together in this position. What I ended up doing was moving the box and standing it up and hammering it that way. So you're going to repeat the same process on the other side. Once you have your 2 side pieces and your end piece together, that's when you'll attach it to the base. You want to make sure that you have it all nice and plumb and square before attaching that bottom on. A tape measure and pencil will help too, so that you don't end up like I did here with the one nail over there in the right field. But you get the idea, 2 on one side, 2 on the other. Now it's time to flip it over and hammer and drill your pilot holes and put 2 nails in on through the bottom that'll attach on both the sides. And then I put 2 right in the middle, and those I did line up properly. You could apply wood glue before you hammer your nails in. The final step is to apply 2 coats of the Waverly Antique Wax. I was really happy with the way that this blended out the 2 different wood tones, even though that you can tell that the front piece and the 2 sides just have a little hint of red, which I think is okay. Just looks a little more rustic. Once I had it the tone that I wanted, I put it outside to let it dry. Grabbed 5 quart mason jars and put them inside. I did add candles and light it at night, but I forgot to take a photo of it, and it's too bright right now in the kitchen. So instead, I went outside, cut a few bunches of lavender, put them in the jars, and I love loving the way they look as vases. And I was thinking how beautiful if you added evergreens and pine cones for the holidays. For project number 5, we're going to create a primitive style wall box out of random scraps of wood and the other part to the picket fence piece that we used on the art project. So this project took me a little bit to create how I was going to put this together. So finally, I figured, okay, I'm making a pocket basically for the front of this wood piece. So we're going to put it together the same way that we put together the ends and the side to the candle box. Only this one, we're going to leave one of the ends off because we're going to make a pocket. And then I thought that backboard is just too, I don't know, plain looking. So I decided to add 2 45-degree angles on either side. And then we're going to run that straight edge right along the top and make it look like a picket fence. So I cut those pieces off using the miter saw. Now we're going to put the pieces to that bottom pocket together. So again, doing the same steps, drill 2 pilot holes, hammer in 2 paneling nails on both of the end pieces, and that's going to attach. We're attaching that to the bottom wood piece. Once we've hammered in both side pieces, we're ready to attach the top piece. And we'll do that the same way, drilling in 2 holes on the top and the bottom, and repeating that on the other side, and hammering in nails in all 4 of those holes. Next, we'll flip the whole piece over, make sure that that box is perfectly lined up, and then drill in 2 holes on either side and hammer in the nails. All right, now comes the fun part. Now we get to decorate it. I decided to take a 7/8 boring bit and drill a hole up at the top. And you could hang it for the hole. It's originally bigger for decorative purposes. Then I'm going to do a dry brush of the Stormy Seas color from Dixie Belle. And we do that also to blend in those side pieces and the bottom piece that were not the same type of wood. Then from the IOD stamp set, I took the giant bee from their Birds and Bee collection. That was a little challenging. I knew it was going to come out faint because of the rough texture of the wood, but I had to go over it a few times to get it as dark as you see it. The last step is to apply some black wax from Dixie Belle all over the entire piece. That'll help give the sides some texture and age and blend in the entire piece. For project number 6, we're going to make a mini wood riser. Here's the supplies and tools if you'd like to take a screenshot. I have these scraps of pine wood that I cut off from our 1x5. I sanded the edges down so that they were rounded, and I found 4 cute little metal feet. These are linked below in the description, and I purchased them from Amazon, and I think they're going to fit on here perfectly. Before I glue them on, I'm I'm going to take some Waverly Antique Wax and apply it lightly all over the piece. Once it had a chance to dry, I applied one of the redesigned transfers from the Vintage Labels collection. The reason that I didn't add this to the center was because I thought that it would hold a votive candle off towards the back, or maybe a little succulent or whatever somebody wanted to display. And that way you could still see the majority of the design. Then I added a little black wax all over the entire piece. And again, this gave it a perfect touch of age and texture. I applied E6000 to the base of the bottom of the riser and then attached the feet. I did definitely go extremely heavy on the E6000 on accident. So that was a nice sticky globby mess to try to wipe off of there before it dried. I wouldn't recommend going that heavy. The good news is they're not ever coming off of there. I did allow that to sit overnight to completely dry. And then the next morning, I decided that it needed just something else. So I grabbed the copper gilding wax from Dixie Belle and I applied that to the edges, all along the sides, and over the feet. And then just a little amount over the top, and you can barely see it unless the light hits it. For project number 7, we're going to create a vintage music wall hanging. Here's the materials and supplies. I'm sure you guys remember the broken dresser drawer from the recent video where we made this coat rack. There was a part to the dresser on the side that was still good, and it was already painted, so that worked out perfect. I have this vintage music from the 1940s, and since it's just sitting in a box, I thought that this would be a nice project to display one of those sheets of music. Tore along the edges, and we'll apply it to the piece of wood using some of the decoupage gel from Redesign. That's what I use to put decoupage paper on furniture, and I love the stuff, so I've been using it on all my smalls. And that split that's in the wood is mostly only up at the top, and it's still, the piece itself is very sturdy, so I decided to leave that there because I think it helps give the piece character. After tacking down the edges, I take a piece of saran wrap, try to start from the middle and push outward to get rid of some of the wrinkles and the bubbles. This process does take me a few minutes, but I believe I ended up getting all of them out. Next, I apply a thin layer of the decoupage gel all over the entire piece. And then I cover the top of my decoupage gel and screw the lid on, and that way it's a lot easier to get off the next time. So for the transfers, I decided to use the branch, 3 leaves, and the neutral color bird. It's funny because as I was creating this project, I remember one that I did maybe 2 years back here on my channel. So I'll link this video to the end of this one and post the free printable link for you, so you can print that out on my blog in case you don't have vintage music or transfers and would like to create a similar project. I thought about adding a few more leaves, but thought that I would keep it fairly simple. Now I think it needs a rag bow up at the top. Remember, adding embellishments and fine details is not my strong suit, but I love to hear all of your suggestions. So definitely let me know in the comments what you would have put up at the top here. I know it needs something in the middle. I thought maybe a vintage button, but I just decided to leave it plain. I'm kind of the plain girl here. I did attach that with some hot glue. I drilled 2 holes up at the top on either side, and I'll thread some jute string up through the hole, tie a double knot in the front, pull it up, and that's going to be our hanger. And trim that off And I made sure that I tied it with a big enough knot that it wouldn't fit through the hole, but yet drilled a big enough hole so I could actually see to thread it. Now, you'll see how the edges are rough cut wood. I don't show it on the video, but I do cover that with that same color paint, and that's a Stormy Seas from Dixie Belle. And then I take a pair of scissors and trim off the ends because it was a little uneven. And then I thought, oh, this needs something else. So along the edges, I did take some of the copper gilding wax, apply some on here and there with my finger. But you can also tell I took some watered down antique wax with a paintbrush and went over the entire piece. And I forgot to show that to you guys. That was before I applied the decoupage gel up over the top of the paper. So I'm sorry about that. I must have lost the clip. But I thought that this copper gilding wax added the final touch that this piece needed. Friends, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a super blessed week, and I will see you next Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time.